I hadn't expected this phone call to shatter everything. Alice's voice came through, distant, flat, almost cold. She didn't say hello, didn't ease into it. She just came out with it. "Dad, you need to stop living in the past," she said, her words slicing through the silence like a blade. I froze, the words hanging in the air, heavy and suffocating. Living in the past? What was she talking about? How could she, my own daughter, say something like that to me? Before I could respond, she continued, her voice taking on a sharp edge. "You keep holding on to old hurts, old mistakes, but it's not helping anyone. It's not helping you, and it's sure not helping me. You need to move on." I couldn't breathe. My heart was pounding in my chest, my thoughts racing, and for a moment, everything went quiet, except for her words echoing in my head. I thought back, way back, to when Alice was just a child. I'd tried so hard, through everything, to provide for her, to show her love. Yes, I made mistakes. Yes, I wasn't always the father she needed. But abandonment? To hear that from her, it was more than I could bear. "Abandonment," I finally managed to say, my voice weak, shaken. "Alice, I never abandoned you. I never stopped loving you." But Alice was already on a roll, her tone growing colder with each passing word. "You weren't there," she said, and the words cut deeper than I expected. "You were always in your own head, lost in your own problems. You just left me there to deal with everything on my own." I felt like I was suffocating. The accusations hit me like waves, one after another, relentless and brutal. She couldn't understand. She didn't know how hard I'd tried, how many nights I'd stayed awake, wondering if I was doing the right thing, wondering if I could be a better father, a better man. But somehow, all that mattered now was her pain, her anger. Nothing I had done seemed to count anymore. "I didn't leave you," I said, my voice shaking now, almost pleading. "I was there. I tried. I wasn't perfect, but I didn't abandon you." But Alice wasn't listening. "I was alone, Dad. I had to take care of myself. I had to deal with things you didn't even notice." There was a long pause before she added, almost bitterly, "And you think I'm just supposed to forget all that? You think some explanation is going to change everything?" I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but the words didn't come. Instead, I just stood there, feeling the weight of it all pressing down on me. The years of trying, the distance that had grown between us, the walls I couldn't seem to break through, no matter how hard I tried. It was all so much. The silence between us stretched, and I knew in that moment that no matter what I said, no matter how much I tried to explain, she had already made up her mind. I had failed her in ways that I couldn't undo. "I'm done, Dad," Alice said, her voice softer now but no less final. "I can't keep doing this. You're not the person I needed, and I can't keep pretending you are." And just like that, the call ended. I sat there, the phone still in my hand, staring at it as though it held the answer to everything. But it didn't. There was no answer, no way to fix this, no way to turn back time. I was left there in the silence, crushed beneath the weight of everything that had been said, everything I hadn't been able to say. And for the first time, I felt the full weight of it all, the realization that no matter how much I wanted to heal this rift, no matter how much I wanted my daughter back, some things can never be repaired. Some wounds never fully heal, and maybe, just maybe, that was the hardest truth to accept. Have you ever been misunderstood by someone you love? What did you do? I hadn't intended to go up into the attic that day, but sometimes you find yourself in places you didn't plan to be, searching for answers you didn't know you needed. After Alice's call, after everything had been said, I felt lost. So I did what I always did when I didn't know where to turn. I started sifting through old things, hoping that something might help me make sense of it all. The attic smelled old, musty, like time had settled into the corners of the house and never left. I hadn't been up there in years, not since Helen's passing. Dust and forgotten memories covered everything, from the old furniture to the boxes of family photos, trinkets, and forgotten mementos. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I kept moving through the boxes, trying to distract myself, to find something to hold on to. And then, in a dusty corner of the attic, I found it, a box labeled Helen's Letters. It was an old, worn box, the kind you'd see in someone's attic for decades. I didn't remember seeing it before, not even when Helen was alive. Maybe she hadn't wanted me to see it, or maybe it had just slipped through the cracks over time. I pulled the box down slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. My hands were shaky as I lifted the lid and saw the letters inside, tied neatly with a faded ribbon. I immediately recognized the handwriting, Helen's. She had always written letters when things got too overwhelming, when the weight of everything felt too much to bear. But these letters were different. I had never seen them before. I sat down on the attic floor, my back against the wall, and began to carefully untie the ribbon. The first letter was dated back to when Alice was only a child. I could see the pain in Helen's words, her delicate penmanship scrawled with such care, each word heavy with emotion. She had written about the struggles she had faced, how alone she felt, how hard it was to raise Alice while dealing with everything else. She had written about the emotional toll the family was under, about the days when I was absent, lost in my own problems. Helen had kept so much from me. I hadn't realized the extent of her sacrifices, the loneliness she had endured. She hadn't wanted to burden me with it, not when I was already struggling to hold everything together. But as I read her words, it became clear how much she had carried on her own. In her letters, she spoke about Alice, how difficult it was for her to understand everything that was happening. Helen had tried to shield her from the emotional chaos, from the silent arguments we had, from the hurt that filled the house when I wasn't there. It was clear that Helen had been doing everything in her power to protect Alice from the truth, to make sure she didn't feel the full weight of our failing marriage. I thought back to all the times I had dismissed Helen's struggles, assuming she was fine, assuming everything would get better on its own. How could I have been so blind? I had been so focused on my own failures, my own guilt, that I hadn't seen hers. And now, reading these letters, I realized how much pain she had kept inside, all while trying to protect Alice and hold our family together. But I had failed her. I had failed both of them. Alice had seen my absence, but she hadn't known the whole story. She hadn't known what Helen had been going through, how much she had been trying to shield her from the truth, from the weight of it all. I didn't know how to fix this. I didn't know how to undo the damage. As I read on, I began to see things from Helen's perspective. The struggles, the emotional distance, the things I had ignored. It was all so clear now. I didn't want to believe that I had been so blind. But the truth was right there in front of me, written in my wife's words. And with that realization came a crushing grief. The truth about the past, about everything I had missed, was a heavy burden to carry. I could no longer escape it. I had to face the reality of what had happened, of what I had failed to see. Have you ever found something that changed your view of the past? What did you do with that knowledge? As I sat there, the weight of Helen's letters pressed heavily on me. The pages were filled with the kind of honesty that can only come from someone who's been carrying a burden alone for far too long. And as I read her words, I began to understand a side of her I had never fully seen. I had been so focused on my own shortcomings that I hadn't taken the time to truly see what Helen had been going through. Helen's letters didn't just speak to me. They spoke to my past, to the moments I had been blind to. She had written about the early years, when Alice was a child, and the emotional toll those years had taken on her. She spoke about the loneliness she felt, the weight of raising our daughter while trying to keep up appearances, while trying to be the strong mother she thought Alice needed. I had always believed that Helen was strong, that she could handle anything that came her way. But these letters showed me the cracks I had missed. She had been carrying so much on her own. I could see it now, through her words. The constant pressure to keep things together, to protect Alice from the growing tension between us. Helen had been fighting a battle that I didn't even know existed. And all along, she had been trying to shield Alice from the emotional chaos of our failing marriage. She had done everything in her power to protect our daughter from the harsh realities of what was happening between us, not wanting her to feel the burden of our struggles. As I read, I began to see the sacrifices Helen made, the times she chose to hold her pain inside to keep Alice safe. It was clear now. Helen had tried to shield our daughter from the truth, from the pain of our broken family, believing that keeping things hidden was the best way to protect her. But in doing so, she had created a barrier between herself and Alice, and I had failed to see it. I had assumed that everything was fine, that Helen was just being strong, just keeping things together as she always had. But the truth was, she had been unraveling inside, and I hadn't noticed. I had been too focused on my own troubles, too lost in my own guilt to recognize what she was going through. The more I read, the more I understood just how much Helen had been protecting Alice. But the more I understood, the more I felt a deep sense of regret. Alice had grown up with this sense of abandonment, but it wasn't just me she was angry at. It was the whole picture, the things Helen had kept hidden, the emotional distance we had both created. Alice hadn't been abandoned in the way she thought. She had been abandoned by the lack of understanding, the lack of communication, the things Helen had tried to protect her from. But in trying to shield Alice from the truth, Helen had inadvertently set the stage for her to believe that I had left her behind. It was clear now that Alice's feelings of abandonment were born from a misunderstanding of what had truly happened. I could see how she had filled in the gaps with anger, with a story that made sense to her, even if it wasn't the truth. But how could she have known any different? How could she have understood the complexity of what had happened when we, as parents, had kept it hidden from her? As I sat there reflecting on all of this, I felt a deep sense of empathy for both Helen and Alice. They had both been victims in different ways. Helen, trying to protect our daughter and carry a burden no one had ever seen, and Alice, growing up with a sense of abandonment she could never fully understand. And now, here I was, standing between them, trying to piece together the story that had been hidden from both of us for so long. But I knew that no matter how much I tried to explain, no matter how many letters I read, the damage had been done. The truth had been buried for too long, and Alice's anger and hurt had taken root in a place that couldn't be easily reached. Do you think a parent's sacrifice should be recognized by their children? Why or why not? I stood outside Alice's door, feeling the weight of everything that had led up to this moment pressing down on me. My hands were shaking, my heart racing. I had waited for this, prayed for this, to sit down, to talk, to show her the letters, to finally explain myself. But now that I was here, I wasn't sure I could do it. What if she didn't listen? What if she rejected me again? I knocked, the sound of my knuckles against the door louder than I expected. There was a long pause before she opened it, her face impassive, unreadable. I could see the walls she'd built between us, thicker than I had ever imagined. "Alice, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady but strained, fighting the emotion bubbling inside me. I wasn't sure how she'd respond, but I had to try. "I found something. Letters your mother wrote. She kept them hidden in the attic. They're about everything we went through. About you, about me, about the family. Please, just listen." She looked at me for a long moment, her arms crossed. "I'm not interested in anything you have to say, Dad," she replied coldly. "You don't get to pull some letters out and make everything okay. You've never been there for me. Why would I believe anything now?" I felt a knot form in my throat, a mixture of frustration and hurt. "It's not about making everything okay," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, trying not to let the tears come. "It's about the truth about what happened, about why I wasn't there. Your mother, she kept a lot from you. She tried to protect you, but I never abandoned you. Please, you have to understand." She didn't move, didn't reach for the letters I was holding out to her. She just stood there, staring at me, the same coldness in her eyes. "I don't need to hear your excuses, Dad. I've heard it all before. And frankly, I don't care about the letters. They won't change anything." Her words hit harder than anything I had prepared for. "I'm not making excuses, Alice," I said, the frustration in my voice now turning into something darker, something more desperate. "I'm trying to explain the truth. You don't understand. You've never understood what we went through. You think I didn't love you, but I did. I tried every day, but I didn't know how to fix it." She shook her head, her face hardening. "You're still doing it, aren't you? Still making this about you. You weren't there when I needed you. I had to grow up without you. You don't get to tell me how things were. You can't fix it now." The anger in her voice, the rejection, it was too much. I wanted to shout, to make her understand, but I knew I couldn't. No matter how many times I explained, no matter how many letters I showed her, Alice had already made up her mind. "I can't change what happened," I said, my voice breaking, my chest tight with the weight of it all. "But I loved you. I always loved you." Her eyes softened for just a moment, and I thought maybe, just maybe, she would see. But then, just as quickly, the walls came back up, and she turned away. "Maybe it's too late for that," she said, her voice quiet, almost sad. "I can't forgive you for what you did. Not now. Not ever." I stood there for a long time, staring at her back as she walked away, the doors slowly closing between us. I had tried. I had given everything I had, and yet it still wasn't enough. The gap between us, the space that had formed over the years, had become unbridgeable. I left her house feeling empty, like something inside me had shattered. I didn't know how to fix this. I didn't know if it could ever be fixed. And that, more than anything, hurt the most. Have you ever tried to make things right with someone who refused to listen? How did you feel? I sat across from Thomas Branson in his small, dimly lit office. feeling more lost than I ever had before. His sharp eyes studied me as I spoke, and I could tell he was trying to make sense of my situation, just as I was. But I had no idea where to start. Alice has accused me of abandoning her, I began, my voice wavering. But it's not just that. There's more. She's been trying to take control of my finances. I didn't think it would come to this, but I need help. Thomas nodded slowly, his hands steepled in front of him. We'll figure this out, but we need to take it one step at a time. From what you've told me, it sounds like Alice might have used your power of attorney. Is that correct? I nodded, feeling a wave of nausea wash over me. Yes, I gave her that power a long time ago, but I never thought she'd use it against me. I never thought she'd try to take control of everything. He leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. The situation is more serious than you might realize. If Alice is manipulating your finances or making decisions without your consent, that's considered financial exploitation. It's elder abuse. The words hit harder than I expected. Elder abuse. I hadn't thought of it that way. I had been so focused on my relationship with Alice, on the personal betrayal, that I hadn't stopped to think about the legal side of things. But now, with Thomas's words hanging in the air, the full weight of the situation began to sink in. This wasn't just about hurt feelings. It was about protecting myself from someone I had trusted, someone I had loved. We'll need to look at your financial records, Thomas continued. We'll need to gather evidence of any unauthorized withdrawals or decisions she made in your name. But you should know this process could take time, and it won't be easy. Time. It felt like there was no more of it. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much had already slipped away. I had tried to protect myself emotionally from Alice's rejection, but now I was learning that the betrayal was far deeper than I could have imagined, and it was happening right under my nose. What are my options? I asked, my voice strained. Thomas exhaled, flipping through a few papers on his desk. We could contest the power of attorney. You could file a petition for guardianship if we can prove she's taking advantage of you. It's not a quick process, and it'll be emotionally taxing, but it's a route we can take if you want to regain control. I sat there, my mind racing. Emotionally taxing? That was an understatement. I had already given so much of myself to this battle. I had fought to keep my family together, to heal the wounds between Alice and me. But now, I was facing something much more complicated. My own flesh and blood had betrayed me. Not just with words, but with actions that could cost me everything I had left. I don't know if I can do this, I muttered, my head spinning. The idea of fighting my daughter in court felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. But I had no choice. If I didn't act, I would lose everything. You don't have to do this alone, Thomas said, his voice steady, reassuring. We'll build a case. We'll fight this. But we need to take it one step at a time. The emotional toll will be heavy, but we'll do what's necessary to protect you. The pressure weighed on me. The emotional turmoil, the legal fight. It felt like too much. But something inside me, some small spark of resolve, told me that I couldn't back down. I had to protect what was mine, what I had worked for, what I had loved. As I left Thomas's office that day, I felt the weight of the legal battle bearing down on me. But there was also a sense of clarity. I had to fight for my dignity, for my future, and for the truth. Do you think family conflicts should be resolved in court? Or is there another way? I stood outside Alice's door again, but this time there was a heaviness in my chest that I hadn't felt before. The letter, the one that explained the truth, that revealed everything about the sacrifices Helen had made, about the struggles we had both faced, was clutched tightly in my hand. I wasn't sure what I expected, but I knew I had to try one last time. The door opened slowly, and Alice stood there, her expression closed off, as if she had already decided how this conversation would go. She didn't say anything at first, just stared at me, waiting. The walls between us felt higher than ever, a barrier I wasn't sure I could break through. Alice, I began, my voice shaking. I know I've failed you. I've made mistakes, and I know it's too late to fix some things. But I need you to understand what I didn't see before. Your mother, she tried to protect you. She hid the truth from you to shield you from what was going on. But that doesn't mean I didn't care. I wasn't absent because I didn't love you. She didn't respond immediately. Her arms were crossed, her stance rigid. The silence stretched between us, uncomfortable and thick. I'm not here to make excuses, I continued, my heart pounding. I'm here because I want you to see what I didn't see. I wasn't the father you needed, but I wasn't the monster you think I was either. Please, just read the letters. Understand the truth. I handed her the envelope, the paper rustling in my trembling hands. She glanced down at it, but didn't take it. Instead, she stepped back slightly, her eyes cold, almost angry. "I don't need your pity, Dad," she said, her voice flat, devoid of warmth. "You're still trying to make this all about you, aren't you? You weren't there for me. You can't just shove some letters in my face and expect everything to be fine." The words hit me harder than I expected, as though each one was a slap to the face. I wanted to argue, to explain how much I had tried, how much I had loved her. But the truth was, I couldn't find the words. I was choking on the sadness, the realization that nothing I said would make a difference. "Alice, please," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking you to understand. The pain you're carrying, it doesn't have to be like this. I'm not the man you think I am. I never meant to hurt you." But she just shook her head, her lips pressing into a thin line. "I don't need your explanations anymore, Dad. I'm done. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep waiting for you to get it. I'm tired of being hurt by you, tired of trying to fix something that can't be fixed." I stood there, feeling my heart break all over again. There was nothing I could say. She had made up her mind, and no matter how much I tried to explain, to make her see the truth, it wouldn't change anything. The gap between us was too wide, and my words were meaningless. For a moment, I just stood there, the weight of it all crushing me. The years of trying, the years of failure, the years of wanting to fix something I couldn't. I had hoped, foolishly, that this time would be different. But now, I understood. Some things can't be fixed. "You don't get it, do you?" she said softly, almost as if she were talking to herself. "It's too late for us." And just like that, she closed the door. I stood there, frozen, for a long time. The finality of it hit me all at once, like a punch to the gut. My daughter, the person I had spent my life trying to protect, trying to love, was gone. And it wasn't just because of me. It was because of everything we never said, everything we never understood. I walked away from her door with a heavy heart, the truth of the situation sinking in. Alice had her own version of the past, her own pain, and no matter how much I wished it were different, she would never see things the way I did. The emotional divide between us was too deep. Is it possible to heal a family rift when one person refuses to listen? What would you do? I found myself sitting in the same chair where I'd spent so many evenings with Alice, watching her grow up, listening to her stories, and trying my best to be there. Even when I wasn't always the father she knew. The house was quieter now, the silence more suffocating than I ever imagined it could be. Every room felt empty, not just physically empty, but emotionally empty. Alice wasn't there anymore, not the way I remembered her. The confrontation had shattered something inside me, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. The reality had set in, and there was no going back. I had tried to explain, to bridge the gap between us with words and letters, but nothing worked. No matter how much I wanted to change the past, to fix what had been broken, I realized now that reconciliation may never come. The damage was done. I thought back to the years I spent trying to be the father I thought she needed. I had always believed that if I just tried harder, if I just showed up more, if I had been more present, things would have been different. But the truth was, I didn't know how to be the father Alice wanted. I didn't know how to undo the damage that had already been done, the distance that had grown between us over the years. And that realization, painful and raw, stung deeper than I expected. But as the days went on, I started to understand something else. My grief wasn't just about losing Alice. It was about the loss of everything that could have been, about the family we could have been, the bond we could have shared. And as much as I hated it, I couldn't deny that this was the reality I had to live with now. In the silence of my house, I reflected on what had truly been lost. It wasn't just the relationship with Alice. It was the years of sacrifice, the years of trying to be a good man and a good father, despite my flaws. It was the trust I thought we had, shattered by accusations and misunderstandings. But I knew now that I couldn't change any of it. I couldn't force Alice to see things from my perspective, and I couldn't undo the past. And yet, as painful as it was, I started to accept that maybe this was the way it was meant to be. Maybe there were no easy answers, no quick fixes, no way to bring back the daughter I once knew. There was a quiet strength in that acceptance, an understanding that some wounds never fully heal. But I had to keep going, had to find a way to live with the pain, to carry it without letting it define me. I wasn't sure how to move forward yet. The future seemed uncertain, and the weight of the past still pressed heavily on me. But I knew one thing. I couldn't keep living in the past, waiting for a resolution that would never come. I had to find a way to heal on my own, to rebuild whatever part of myself I could salvage. This wasn't the ending I wanted, and it wasn't the ending I had hoped for. But it was the reality I had to face. And in that quiet acceptance, I began to realize that even though some wounds may never fully heal, they don't have to dictate the rest of my life. Have you ever had to let go of someone you loved for your own well-being? How did you move forward? It's been weeks since I last saw Alice. The house is quieter now, the echo of her absence still hanging in the air. I've learned to live with the silence, though, as painful as it is. The ache doesn't go away, but it becomes something you learn to bear, like an old scar that still hurts when the weather changes. I don't know if I'll ever stop feeling the weight of it, but I know one thing. I can't keep living in the past. I spent so many years trying to be a better father, trying to fix things, trying to prove I was worth loving. But the truth is, I can't change the past, and I can't force anyone to understand what they're not ready to see. I tried to reach Alice, tried to make her see the truth, but she's made her choice, and I have to accept that. And so I've started moving forward, slowly but surely. The hardest part wasn't letting go of Alice. It was letting go of the idea that I could fix everything. I spent so much time blaming myself for what happened, thinking I could somehow undo the damage. But the truth is, some things are beyond repair. And the most important lesson I've learned is that I can still find peace, even without the resolution I hoped for. It's not easy, but I've been taking better care of myself. I've started spending more time on things I've neglected for too long, things that bring me joy, even if they're small. I've taken up walking again, something I used to do with Helen before she passed. There's something peaceful about the rhythm of my steps, the quiet of the morning air. It's a small way to reclaim some peace in my life, to take back something that feels like mine. I don't know what the future holds, but I know I can't keep living in the shadows of the past. I can't keep wondering if things would have been different, if Alice could have understood. The only thing I can control now is how I choose to live. I can choose to heal, to move forward, to take care of myself, and to find strength in what I have left. And that's enough. As I look back on everything that's happened, the betrayal, the anger, the loss, I can't help but reflect on what truly matters. Family, trust, self-respect. Those are the things that define us, that shape who we are. And I've learned that while we can't always control what happens to us, we can control how we respond. I can choose to move forward with dignity, to accept the things I can't change, and to let go of the things that weigh me down. I'll never stop loving Alice, but I have to love myself too. I have to find peace, even if it's in the quiet moments, even if it's in the small steps forward. There's strength in that. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real way to heal. Do you believe that justice always leads to peace? Or is it a different kind of strength that helps us move on?